There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. There's battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds are getting so much resistance from behind.
For our reunion in 2012, we wanted to create an exhibit on activism. We wanted to re-examine the turbulent times that classes of 1971, 72, and 73 experienced here at Grinnell College. It all started with A.J. Morey, who had saved a large archive of documents and images from back in the day.
I got to a point where I looked at all of this and I thought, what am I doing with this? And then I thought, other people must have this great stuff too. So I decided to see if my classmates would want to contribute their stuff, and we'd make a big archival donation and an exhibit out of the materials that we received.
While A.J. continued to gather images, David Hechler asked their classmates to write essays about what activism meant to them back then, for better and worse, and what it means to them now. He extracted excerpts from many of these essays that he pinned next to the images.
Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop now. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. Children, what's that sound?
Then, during the reunion itself, we asked some of the people who lived through those days to tell us what they remembered about them. Janet Murphy recalled a notorious episode in which a couple of students turned the American flag on campus upside down, an international symbol of distress.
I remember the police chief coming and taking the flag and saying that we couldn't have it back unless we went all over town and explained to everybody why it was a respectful thing to do. And so I was in a group of students that broke off, and we started going around town knocking on doors and explaining that, you know, it was a sign of distress and a sign of mourning, and it was actually a very respectful thing to do with the flag.
This is the protest when the administration wanted the resident advisors to report marijuana users.
Yeah, turn people in.
Turn people in, and within about 2 hours, half the campus was in front of Burling Library with signs like this saying, "We're high, what are you going to do about it?" And that was the end of that. It was the quickest action victory probably in the history of student protests. Instant victory.
Well, when I got here to Grinnell in the fall of 1969, I came with me with a whole bunch of materials about the Vietnam moratorium, which I got from my family back home in New York. And I brought it to one of the first meetings I could find about people who were organizing against the war and said, listen, there's this thing going to start in November. It's called the Vietnam moratorium, and it's going to be national, and campuses everywhere, and we should be part of that. And so who do I give this to? And in typical Grinnell fashion, by the end of the meeting, it was like, well, you do this. You can be the head of the Vietnam moratorium.
People try to put us to down, talking about my generation, just because we get around. Talking about my generation, things they do look awful. Talking about my generation, I hope I die before I get old. Talking about my generation, just my generation, baby. Why don't you all fade away? Don't try to dig.
I really had a lot of conflicting feelings about what was going on during that time. I thought, I thought Vietnam was a bad idea, but I had difficulty sorting through what was real and what was not real. There were so many different points of view.
Kathy remembered one particularly painful experience when she and a classmate were canvassing the town to talk about the war. They sat down with a couple and their daughter, only to learn that the daughter's boyfriend had been killed in Vietnam just the week before.
They had been proponents of the war, and now all of a sudden they were trying to sort through what it all meant and whether this was really a good idea or a bad idea. And we sat there for an hour and we just listened. You know, there wasn't much any of us could say that was comforting or very helpful, but we gave them an opportunity to talk, and that's what they wanted to do. But it really left me with even more conflicted feelings. And then on top of that, you know, there was Vietnam, and then there was the drug use, and there was the sexual revolution. And I had a lot of questions about what was healthy, what was good, what was not good, and trying to sort through all that was a challenge, and it made it difficult sometimes.
Bruce Nissen remembered marching during halftime at a football game with a group of students who carried the flag of the National Liberation Front, the adversary American troops were fighting in Vietnam.
The only one that's given the pictures that I've seen that makes me reconsider and think I probably would not do the same thing again is the one where a wedge of us students marched out during a halftime at one of the football games. And a big, huge wedge, and the person in the front had a NLF flag, and that one I would definitely reconsider and probably not necessarily do again.
Because NLF, National Liberation Front.
Because it was alienating terrifically to the American people.
Others defend the brand of activism that was found on campus back then.
People, I just don't go there. It's like, oh, well, you were too brash or whatever. I don't think so. I think that you have to get, you have to. There's a little destruction that comes with transformation, and there was just some blatant kind of thuggery and that sort of thing. But I think that's just kind of some self-absorbed people that they just really weren't about the issues. They were more about stealing the limelight or something.
The crescendo of demonstrations culminated in the closing of the college in May 1970.
Killings at Kent State and Jackson State and the incursion into Cambodia that precipitated them overtook everyone's events, and in a sense the moratorium came home to Grinnell in the form of the closing of the college and a complete moratorium on business as usual here, which was the slogan of the Vietnam moratorium, no more business as usual. And in fact, by May we had achieved our objective, but not in the way we thought.
At the end of the exhibit, we posted excerpts from essays that seemed to sum up something important about those years. Barry wrote a passage that captured a little bit of everything. We asked him what prompted it.
At some point in the spring, I was actually standing behind a fellow student in the bookstore who had a carton of cigarettes that they were clearly hiding from the cashier as we went through the line. And I said, aren't you going to pay for those? And she looked at me and she said, no, man, I'm liberating them. And I remember at the time thinking, something's going horribly wrong here. That isn't what we're supposed to be about. But the times were also such that I didn't say anything to the cashier and just kind of looked at her in amazement. One of the things that happened during that period of time is, I think for a number of years, as this exhibit really fills out, there was this confluence of influences and cultural mores, cultural strains that sort of all came together and were self-reinforcing. You had sort of rock and roll and a sort of a general feeling of anarchy and nihilism that represented. You had a lot of experimentation with drugs and different living styles, and you had all the politics. And of course, it's hard for people today to remember the draft, which was a threat to so many men and women here at the time. So being against the war was more than just some theoretical stand. It was kind of an existential threat to many people. And that occasioned a lot of emotion and passion. And it became very, very hard to disentangle where one of these things started and the other ended.
A funny thing happened when we were installing this exhibit.
Give me a second, I need to get my story straight. My friends are in...
We've been in touch with Grinnell history professor Victoria Brown, who taught a class that was especially interested in our project. It turned out that they wanted to create an exhibit in response to ours, so we agreed to leave them some space.
To you months ago, I know you're trying to forget, but between the drinks and subtle things, the holes in my apologies, I'm trying hard to take it back. So if by the time the bar closes and you feel like falling down, I'll carry you home tonight. We are young, so let's set the world on fire. We can burn bright.
It looks to me like the Grinnell students are rising to the challenge once again. I'm exceedingly happy to see all these things up here on the wall. It's really, really fantastic. I was looking at this one on student rights. Ignore your rights and you'll lose them. Grinnell students are naive, children, helpless, immature, just exactly the kind of student power kind of stuff we were fighting back in the late 60s. In fact, there's an Occupy Grinnell is absolutely fabulous. I'm just so happy that they've joined basically the Occupy movement I saw. They've taken up issues that we were not yet advanced enough to take up, issues such as GLBTQ issues, even things about drag events on campus. Once again, it's really obvious to me that a Grinnell student, this is a safe place to contest the injustices and the unfairnesses in our society. It still is.
We called our exhibit There's Something Happening Here, and we added the second line from the song, What It Is Ain't Exactly Clear. After 40 years, at least a few things seem clear. For many of us, the late 60s and early 70s were an incredibly powerful time to be here. But it's even clearer that our views of those times varied tremendously. What some students found exhilarating caused others to literally contemplate suicide. If history is any guide, it's likely that the Occupy Grinnell phenomenon has provoked detractors who could probably fill their own wall. We hope that students continue to feel passionate about their experiences here, and that the college continues to supply sufficient walls to accommodate them.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds are getting so much resistance from behind. Time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and carrying signs. Mostly say hooray for our side. It's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Paranoia strikes deep into your life it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. Step out of line, the man come and take you away. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going now. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop now. What's that sound? Everybody look what's